Tired of losing your sanity looking for important work? Dropbox Dash finds what you need fast across all your work apps so you can focus on what matters. Dash means less time searching, more time creating. Learn more at dropbox.com/dash.
Welcome to Farm Year Daily, a Field Forward podcast. I'm your host, David Geiger. Today on Farm Year Daily, we talk about I-State disease concerns, SkyScout aerial surveillance, and targeted approaches to fungicides with agronomy technical advisor Dan Bjorklund. Please be sure to like and follow the podcast as well as our social media at Field Forward Pod. We would love to have you join our community, keeping folks informed about what is affecting our farmers. This is Farm Year Daily. And joining me on Farm Year Daily, I have Dan Bjorklund. He is the agronomy technical advisor for Landus, and we're going to be talking about some new technology helping him look at the agronomy aspects of farming. Dan, thank you so much for joining us on Farm Year Daily, and tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the work that you do.
Okay, I graduated with an agronomy degree from Iowa State a few years ago, 1980. And back in those days, a lot of people were either ag business, maybe agronomy combined, or ag business, agronomy minor, or farm studies. There are a lot of different majors, but I was one of the few people that really loved just the whole aspect of agronomy. And I worked for a few companies. First, Land O'Lakes out of Minneapolis on the agronomy side as a technical specialist, and worked for a few other companies. And the last 4 years for Landus.
So we're talking about a pretty broad spectrum of experience in the agronomy side of things, and that's exciting to me because right now we're talking about the cutting edge. So you've had a lot of experience in scouting. And today we're going to talk about SkyScout. Can you tell me about that and just how that's changed your work?
SkyScout is an aerial surveillance system using drones, using planes and satellites together. And I worked in the last 20 years, there have been other systems where you could use maybe the satellites and use NDVI, which was an imagery that would, if the image of the field was green, that was good. Corn was growing well, beans were good. If it was red, hey, something's going on there. So SkyScout is different because it's driven by AI. It has NDVI, and I look at that because I'm familiar with it, but it has several different imagery systems. And one that I found extraordinarily helpful in the last 4 weeks is one called Thermal, which actually takes a temperature of the canopy of the field that's entered in. It takes a temperature. And believe me, David, it's amazing to see the variation and the fluctuation out in fields based off whether there's disease present, because it's sort of like human beings. If you are just about to get sick, sometimes it starts with rise in temperature. I'm seeing that with this imagery with SkyScout. How it's changed what I do, man. When I started a few decades ago, it was all boots on the ground, walk into the field. And, we were taught to do the Z pattern through, a quarter or half a section. It takes a long time. We have 130,000 acres, 98 growers, 1,000 fields, and I'm one of the few people that understands how to read the image, the thermal image, to know where to go. So, from a time standpoint, I can't even give you an adjective that describes it. It's amazing what we have today versus what we had when I started.
How much time would it take you to just do a quick? Want to just scout something real fast, a couple acres? What would that time commitment look like?
Early in the season, if you were taking stand counts for a farmer you're working with, it would take a couple hours just to maybe go in the front side of a field, maybe past the end rows, 100 feet into the field, taking 4 or 5 stand counts, using a tape measure, measuring out in a 30-inch row, 17 and a half feet, counting the plants, and then taking averages. SkyScout does it instantaneously. It takes an image, and you have the emergence ratings, the stand count, basically in real time. It's incredible. I mean, it really is. And at Landus, we've had some other systems that we've used before we went to this particular company. And this really is the next step to me. I could give you a little background of what I've seen in the last few weeks that I think is really important, David. I think that because of all the wet weather we've had, because of the next 2-week forecast of being a little bit cooler than normal, we have a huge potential impact of disease in corn that could have significant yield hit later on when we get into harvest.
Let's jump right into that then. Do you have an example in the last week or two then of using SkyScout in a situation that allowed you to catch something?
Yes, I initially was looking for tar spot because tar spot's the hot topic. That's what everybody's talked about since it invaded Indiana in 2017. And I first visibly saw a tar spot in 2022 in Northeast Iowa around Hampton. And that was in August. And it was August 6th, and we'd missed the prime time to, try to protect those corn plants with the VT stage at a fungicide. So we couldn't take care of them completely, but we had individuals who split fields, and we still provided 20 bushels advantage spraying in probably R2 in August, which is not the prime time. I've already found tar spot this week, the earliest I've ever visibly seen it. And here's the really neat thing about it. This thermal imagery, and I don't want to go too much into the weeds, so I'm not going to talk about exactly. This is for another time, David, but the areas where the SkyScout, if we took a farmer's field order and we put it in the program and it's running the surveillance basically since planting some of these fields in April. Most recently, we've got full canopy. We have a lot of corn that's almost at VT, almost fully tasseled. And there were indications in some of these fields that there might be disease present. So I went out there looking for tar spot. I found some, but what really surprised me is I found something else. Northern corn leaf blight. And the last time that I seen northern corn leaf blight with lesions 3 to 6 inches long, cigar shaped, at this time of the year was in 2014 when we had a similar really wet pattern to the season. And fungicides were not as widely adapted back in 2014. We had individual farmers who lost 50, 60, up to 100 bushel yields because it took the corn out by mid-August. And I was surprised this week at the number of fields that I found northern corn leaf blight. I found tar spot, but we have two diseases that both like it wet and cool. So we have a double opportunity to have an outbreak. And I'm seriously very concerned. And I put the alert out to all the salespeople that we work with, to anybody who will listen, that I'm going to say it. I've been an agronomist for 46 years, seen a lot of different things. I'm calling for a disease outbreak in the I-states in 14 days from now.
Hey, Dan, we're going to pause for just a moment and get back to the conversation after a market close update. And after the WASDE report, there was some negative trade at the close on Friday in grain. September corn 3 1/4 cents down, $3.96, with December falling 4 1/4 at $4.12 1/4. Soybeans in August 8 1/4 weaker at $10.04 1/4, with September down 7 1/4 to $9.95. Soybean meal in August $1.10 a ton in the red at $270.30. Wheat in September 9.5 cents lower at $5.45, with December falling 9.5 cents at $5.65 In the livestock market, close for Friday. Green in cattle. August live cattle $2.97 a hundredweight higher at $222.20, with October $2.62 more at $219.70. Feeder cattle in August, $4.05 a hundredweight in the green at $225.32, with September up $4.17 at $325.40. Lean hogs in August down, however, $1.55 at $104.67, with October $1.62 weaker at $90.65 a hundredweight. That is the Friday market close. This is Farm Here Daily. Well, I want to touch on northern corn leaf blight and finding those lesions. If you hadn't had this thermal imagery and gone specifically there to check out what you thought was originally tar spot, what might have happened? Would this blight have been found in time to watch it or treat it, or do you think that just would have been an area that couldn't really be dealt with at that point?
I think it would have been like 2014, where a lot of acres. I only believe I don't have the stats in front of me, but at most, we had maybe 10 or 15% of the acres in Iowa where I live treated, even though we saw northern corn leaf blight coming, but it was maybe 3 weeks from now when we saw it. I don't think we would have seen it. I found it in every field this week, and I was in a dozen fields, but some of these areas were maybe 200 feet into the field. Some of these fields are right in the middle of the field. And I saw with this thermal imagery that we were utilizing, I can explain this. The elevated temperature on this image is demonstrated with a light pink to a red color. Normal temperature is white in that field, and below normal is blue. So you have the whole field with all those different images represented. And some of these disease images, it almost looks like it's coming from the west or the southwest, almost on an angle like it's windblown, like a windblown spore would be blown. And so you see that. You see a slight temperature increase, very light pink, so you have to really, focus in on it. I circle those areas to scout, and then I go scout them, and that's where we found the northern corn leaf blight. I don't think we would have found it. I sent photos in to an outstanding agronomist, Iowa State Extension agronomist in central Iowa, and she was absolutely amazed because she said it's been too warm. And I said, well, this particular genetics has been known to be a little susceptible in the past, and I think that's what we're seeing first. But I think it's an incubation. It's the canary in the mine scenario where that disease is going to continue and it's going to go linear. And in 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to have it everywhere. If we continue to have rainfall and these cool temperatures, it'll be very similar to 2014. And people won't catch it in time. Yeah, there will be significant yield loss. And with markets the way they are today, we got to have yield. I don't always like the term yield your way through these markets, but what else is a producer supposed to do when you can't control the prices? You've got to control the yields that you can produce, and that's your currency of the bushels that you bin and that you hopefully market for better prices later on.
Let's take a 10,000-foot view at SkyScout. Does this allow for better use of targeted applications of fungicides rather than more of a widespread use because there's disease in the field, but you don't know exactly how pervasive it is? Is this something you can now be more targeted or maybe even use drones to specifically get a certain spot?
Absolutely. The drone technology has developed amazingly the last 4 years. I remember some of the first drones that we were talking about using for a spray type service like that 4 years ago, and their capacity and how many acres they could cover. And today you could easily use that to target these areas while you could continue to use the surveillance to see if it was controlled. And if it wasn't, it would buy some time. What I've found is obviously the earlier you can find the disease and stop it, the better. Once we get into August, and I mean, I'm going to make a statement, and guys can challenge me or not, but most of the farmers that I know, don't want to look at corn in August. A lot of them, once we're done, if we're going to use a fungicide program at VT, that's the last time we go out and look at the field. Or maybe we look in September to, schedule harvesting if we see something, maybe is a little bit more weaker stock. But most of the guys just don't go check in August. And that's where I have helped individuals, even last year with a different service. It still we were able to go and find some disease. As you recall, Southern rust came in to the upper corn belt last year because of the tropical storm Burl that came through the Gulf and deposited southern rust in like July 17th. We don't get southern rust up here. I've seen it maybe one or two other times significantly in my career. And if we had not had a way to detect that last year, it's as significant a yield robber as tar spot.
As we move forward then, what do you view as the next steps, the future of this technology, using SkyScout or having this capability of aerial surveillance? How do you integrate that into your farm?
Oh, I mean, I think that is a fantastic question. And you mentioned some of the, whether it's Iowa State, Purdue, Illinois, Minnesota, Nebraska, wherever they're at, young people going into agronomy, maybe they're a junior or senior, and we've had some interns this year. They were doing different things in different locations, took out a couple this week, and we had one from Iowa State that sent a note back to the person that is organizing that and said, this is what I like. This is what this individual was so excited because we had iPads out in the field and we said, okay, it looks like we might have disease in this area. We all walked out to that area. We got we were like hand width apart, looking at 5 corn plants in a row, and each went across. And somebody would shout out when they found something. And we spent 3 days doing that. And it was amazing what it does as far as managing in the future. The biggest question in some of the areas where farmers get the most frustrated, at least when I talk to them, riding with them in combines and looking at yield monitors, is how come I have this yield level in this part of the field and it drops off in this other part of the field? A service like SkyScout and a targeted type approach, whether it's disease control or maybe a fertility issue, because it'll pick that up too, allows you to manage on an acre by acre basis. If you want to get more yield, let's do it with the process. Sometimes it's in the margins. Sometimes we don't have these huge yield increases by hybrids or genetics anymore. Sometimes it's doing a few other things right and being able to farm on every acre and get a positive ROI on every acre. That's what SkyScout does. The variability in these fields that I've looked at has been, that's been what I think has been the most amazing, because you'll see the disease. A lot of times the disease comes into those plants that are weaker because maybe they have a sulfur deficiency or something else. And then it sets in those areas first. And that's where it incubates. And because it becomes an incubator for maybe healthy plants in the rest of the field.
I'd really like to emphasize that last point, because you said you would argue this type of approach to anybody. And I think the targeted aspects of being able to use aerial surveillance like SkyScout and targeted approach of drone technology makes it so you kind of go against the detractors on both sides of the issue. One who might say that overuse of pesticides is too prevalent. And the other might be, I've heard skeptical farmers say, yeah, sure, fungicide use can increase yields, but it's not worth the price of the products most of the time. And this would allow you to use these targeted smaller doses to help certain areas of your field in areas that would potentially be worth it. What do you say to that type of argument? And is my supposition right there?
Yes, it is, because I have some real life examples. Last year when Southern Rust came in, there were some farmers I know that were originally planning a fungicide application across all their acres, decided to back out because of market prices at the time. Southern Rust came in. We were able to at least convince them to go in a targeted approach in some of those areas where we saw the biggest infestation levels. And when you got the field map, the maps, the yield maps later on, there were 20, 30, 40, 50 bushel differences. ROI, big time. When you look at the cost of fungicide and application versus that yield gain, back in 2022, it was really tough to get farmers to spray in August. Some of them had already sprayed, a month earlier at VT, and they were not going to go in again. But we found that some genetics were more susceptible to tar spot than others, and they needed 2 applications, whereas others only needed 1. So we went and did some side-by-sides. I remember a farmer who split a quarter, half sprayed, half not, 20 bushels difference, wished he would have sprayed the whole field. David, anyone who says, I have a hard time finding routine use of fungicide work, I'm not going to argue that point with them. But as an agronomist, when I see the disease I'm seeing now through the 9th of July, this early, and I'm seeing it 100% of the fields where SkyScout is saying the disease is present, and we have the forecast we have for the next 2 weeks, I fear for some of these guys. There will be 50, I guarantee you, there will be 50 bushel losses, and people are going to be shell-shocked at the end of the season.
Dan, before I let you go, you are with Landus, you are the agronomy technical advisor, and you're working with SkyScout. If folks are interested in learning more about something like SkyScout or are interested in talking about with you all, is there a place to go learn more? Are there some resources to find out?
Yes, we have an 800 number, 1-800-GROW. There are people manning that call system all the time. I was involved with that when I first started here 4 years ago. David, I came here basically because I was going to finish out the year. I was turning 65 and I was going to retire. When I met the people who were here and the innovation that I saw, I'm telling you, I'm a few years past that now. I'm having so much fun and I love agronomy so much. I have no date. I have no target date. I can monitor this from my office and I can send out people that can get out into the fields without having heat exhaustion. I don't think there's any time limit. It's going to extend. People who love agronomy, they can work in agronomy for as long as they want.
Dan Bjorklund is the agronomy technical advisor with Landus, joining us on Farm Here Daily. Thank you so much, Dan, for your time.
Hey, thanks, David.
Thanks, Dan. This is Farm Here Daily, a Field Forward podcast. Thank you all for listening. Again, in order to continue to produce this type of local content, we would love to have you join our community. So please follow the podcast as well as our social media channels at Field Forward Pod. You can also find me on social media at Geiger Reports, as well as WHOTV Channel 13 every weekday in their morning and noon hour programs. Again, I am your host, David Geiger, and I'll be back again on Monday, everybody.